Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute honor to be addressing such a distinguished audience. My thanks to Errol Bey and to the TÜSİAD board for the invitation to speak to you all. I want to start my remarks today by stressing the importance that we in the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the EBRD, attach to Turkey and to Turkey's continued modernization. Now, this isn't just because of the volume of business that EBRD does in this country. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It's because we take a broader view of transition. We are acutely aware of the historical context of Turkey's progress since the creation of the Republic. We see that progress has gained momentum, of course, in the last decade and a half, and now, despite all the challenges of the recent past, Turkey is delivering some of the strongest growth of any of the countries where we work. And EBRD, we in EBRD, we value Turkey also for the way that it can inspire other countries, not just its neighbors, but other countries also on similar journeys as Turkey's. And we can take a broader view because of who we are in EBRD. Many of you will already know us, many of you are our clients. But even some of our closest partners might actually just benefit from a reminder of the reasons why EBRD was set up in the first place. Our mission, the EBRD's mission, as defined at the end of the Cold War, is to further the transition towards open market economies and to promote private and entrepreneurial initiative. And Turkey has always been one of our shareholders, right from day one, back in 1991. But since we actually began investing in Turkey, only as recently as 2009, it's been one of EBRD's star performers. We've already invested 10 billion euros in Turkey. We're extremely proud of what we have done to assist Turkey in its efforts to open up its economy, drive sustainable growth, and boost the private sector. It's been our #1 market since 2014. And if you just take the last 3 years together, just take 15, 16, and 17 together, then EBRD has invested 5.4 billion euros in the Turkish economy through 137 projects. And our profile here has been true to our mission. Our profile has been geared to private sector development. And last year, for example, all but one of our 51 projects was in the private sector. Indeed, if you take our portfolio as a whole, 97% of our portfolio in Turkey is in the private sector, with you, people like you. We invest in many, many different sectors. We're present at the moment across the country. We have offices in Istanbul and Ankara. We've got total staff on the ground of over 80 people. And our experience of working in Turkey has been so successful that we've often used this country as a space for developing new initiatives, new innovative products that then can be rolled out in other EBRD countries for their benefit as well. And that success is, to my mind, a reflection of Turkish entrepreneurial strengths and its openness to new ideas. But our work here, however impressive, is about much more than just projects, both individually and in their cumulative effect. We can only deliver on this great mission if we combine those investments with the most active efforts in the areas of policy reform. And here our achievements, I think, illustrate that lending to the state is not the only way to be taken seriously on matters of investment climate. You have to be willing, and we are, and I am personally, you have to be willing in private to tell it as you see it to policymakers about the impact that politics and policies can have on investor sentiment. And we do that all of the time, sometimes, of course, together with all of you. Now, while our mission is the same as it was when we were founded in the early 1990s, our understanding of what a successful modern market economy looks like, where transition is heading, that has evolved. We believe that there are 6 qualities that measure the progress of our countries of operations on that transition journey. We're already actively working to promote all 6 of those qualities here in Turkey. They are resilience, competitiveness, green, inclusion, integration, and very importantly, good governance. So let me just take a look briefly at how the Turkish economy is faring on each of those qualities, and how EBRD's work is designed to improve Turkey's performance still further. Let's start with resilience. I think Turkey is doing better than most of our EBRD countries. Progress has been made on reforming the financial markets, but more, of course, could still be done to increase market capitalization and attract long-term funds. On the policy front, we've been working very, very closely in the development of the Turkish lira money market at Borsa Istanbul. I hope that this will lead to the creation of a proper benchmark index. And we're encouraging potential providers of local funds as well to take part in the money market, as sufficient liquidity is, of course, a precondition for this to happen. Second quality, competitiveness. Well, our focus on the private sector is, I believe, making the entire economy much more equipped for global and regional markets. The government is meanwhile working to reduce costs, to support innovation. That's a particularly important ingredient in the recipe for success. If Turkey is really going to meet the challenge of generating long-term sustainable growth, it needs to shift. It needs to shift from a growth model based on investment and adopting technology from elsewhere to one that's, of course, much more powered by innovation and developing new technology itself. And in this context, I want to hail TÜSİAD's work and the advocacy for the Industry 4.0 and the very recently concluded research on Turkish industry's digital transformation. We're also in EBRD very, very active here in Turkey in policy reform in the area of vocational and technical training, trying to create the skills which meet the industrial requirements of today and tomorrow. And here we're incredibly grateful to TÜSİAD and its members for joining forces with EBRD to improve vocational training standards through the Public-Private Policy Steering Committee that we created. Then there is green. The green economy. This isn't just a fad, this is real. This is really what is important now as part of the modern market economy. We attach great importance to the green agenda, and that's illustrated by the fact that half of all of our projects in Turkey last year promoted energy and resource efficiency or renewables, many of them highly innovative. These included the financing of a geothermal power plant, the building of resource-efficient hospitals under a public-private partnership model. It also included the provision of finance to local banks for on-lending to SMEs, municipalities, and to households to improve their own energy performance. I actually think EBRD's record here in this area in Turkey is truly innovative. Back in 2010, we launched MidCEF. This is at 1.5 billion euros, our largest credit line for mid-sized investments by the private sector in renewable energy and energy efficiency. We've also financed almost half of Turkey's geothermal capacity, making this country a world leader in such technology. And now we intend to capitalize on the recently adopted new energy efficiency action plan. This is partly the fruit of our own policy reform efforts, and it replicates the European Union's best sector policies to try and reduce external energy dependence and to promote sustainable development. And then there is the transition quality of inclusion. Turkey, unfortunately, in this area, still lags behind many of our other countries of operations. It has large geographical disparities, low employment rates and productivity levels, and high informality in poorer regions. The female labour force participation rate has increased over the past decade, but at around 32%, it remains one of the lowest in the OECD. As you all know, even better than I, youth unemployment is persistently high as a result of a mismatch in skills and challenges in access to finance and education. But if the challenges are large in this area, then so are the opportunities. So EBRD's very innovative Women in Business program passed a major milestone in Turkey last year when its financing and advice reached 15,000 companies led or owned by women, and, very importantly, this was across 87 of the country's 89 provinces. We also work with companies large and small, from Ford Otosan to Honeymaker and Balmer Park, to offer on-the-job learning and employment for youth, for women and people in remote areas. I'm very proud of what we're doing on this front, but inclusion, building a more inclusive economy, is something I think we all ought to really push hard on in Turkey. On the transition quality of integration, clearly significant steps have been taken to liberalise rail transport, partly thanks to EBRD's efforts, and preparations to privatise highways, bridges and ports are, I believe, underway. Large public transport and infrastructure projects, they continue apace, some under public-private partnership structures. And here, our only public sector project of last year supported the expansion of the metro here in Istanbul, one of the world's most congested cities. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, good governance. I think it's important for a good and long-standing friend of Turkey, like EBRD, to speak frankly here. But I can also be relatively brief, because Tunçe Bey and Erol Bey both spoke very well on this issue earlier this morning. I stand with them on that issue. Let me start with the good news. I think standards of corporate governance are relatively high in Turkey now, and we're working very, very hard to improve the strategic management of Turkish companies through our equity investments. 15% of our portfolio in Turkey is now in equity, and I want to do more of that because it helps to improve corporate governance in many companies. It helps to make them not just champions in Turkey, but I want them to become regional and then global champions as well, and corporate governance is fundamental to that. I think we're on the right track there. But consistently good state governance is also vital for investors. Investors, whether they're domestic or foreign, and I know from conversations with many foreign investors around the world that I meet that the quality of state governance in Turkey is a key criterion in the choices they make or will make about the destination of their investments. So I think it's imperative to maintain the credibility and capability of Turkey's democratic institutions and to uphold the rule of law in this country. Because as we know from experience, sad experience around the world, any fall-off in those standards can frankly have a chilling effect on the overall investment climate. And we don't want that. We want to bring people to this country. It's got great potential, but those institutions really matter and they need to be kept up to high quality. So ladies and gentlemen, as the numbers and the sheer range of our activities here show, Turkey is hugely important to the EBRD. And I'd venture to suggest that as a dependable and highly effective partner, the EBRD is also hugely important to Turkey in return. For all our many joint successes, there's a huge amount of work still to be done. And that makes for more opportunities for domestic and foreign investors alike. We're going to be looking to you even more for leadership on innovation and investments that are both sustainable and inclusive. And there is still more you can do through such leadership to inspire the very important small business sector here, as well as business people and industrialists in the wider region. And for its part, the Turkish government needs to build on the achievements of the last 15 years to reinvigorate the process of structural reform, and we will be helping them with that. Rest assured, we're going to be here to help both the government, but for me, very importantly, our private sector friends here in Turkey. Thank you very much indeed.